Welcome to Intuitive Human. Our mission is to normalize intuitive experiences for humanity. We're connecting with people just like you, excavating their highly impactful, view-shifting, intuitive experiences, diving deeply into what it actually feels like when you go beyond the veil. In this interview, Ilona Pamplona shares her clairsentient and emotional empath abilities of inner feeling and navigation, where she describes steadfastness, belief, and trust that helped save the life of a friend. We hope you see your own reflection in these stories, empirically proving intuition really does exist, and in such a way so that you may discover your own intuitive human.
My name is Ilona Pamplona. I am currently a life coach, although I spent about 15 years in higher education, specifically doing recruitment. I'm currently 40 years old, and I would say I started having these experiences that I can recall as early as my freshman year of college. And then again, the most palpable one happened at around 33 years old, and then the next big one was around 37.
And the things that we're going to be talking about today, can you just give us a little sneak peek into that before we get into the extreme details?
Sure. So the stories of intuition for me is kind of having this unknown inner knowing, just having knowledge of something without any rhyme or reason when prompted or when asked, especially my first story. And then afterwards, it's just like deep feelings of knowing something but not understanding where it comes from.
Gotcha. Yeah. So where logic kind of takes a back seat, but the experience is real.
Yeah.
And then turns out to be validated in some ways.
Very much so. My father was from Colombia, and my mom's from Ecuador.
Okay. Do you have a family history of intuition or inner knowing or any of these abilities that you live with and engage in? Does anybody else in your family have any of that?
Yes, my mother. My mother always
Tell us
is.
about Mom.
Oh, so my mom is super intuitive. She uses her gut on a daily basis for anything, for any question that someone has. She either feels it or she doesn't feel it. And if she doesn't feel it, she can get overwhelmed because there's times where it's almost like she hasn't honed in the sense of her intuition. So it's overwhelming to feel like, no, this is a no, rather than just being grounded in the feeling that her intuition is telling her it's okay to pass.
I see.
And we always have this joke in our family. She had met a very famous astrologer, Walter Mercado, and he had once told her a little bit more and you'd be a witch, because her intuition, he could feel how high her intuition was. So she wasn't completely clairvoyant or clairsentient or any of the things. She had enough intuition to feel it, but not to fully maybe like feel confident in it. The first one in college, I was in New Jersey where I went to school. And the second one, I was also in New Jersey. The last one, I was living in the Northern Virginia, DC metropolitan area. So East Coast, Mid-Atlantic.
Got it. And then in the daily routine, was there anything special or magnanimous that was happening for you? Or was it just like every normal day?
I would say that all of the first two, definitely every day, going to school or going to work. The third one, I was doing a lot of international recruitment. And I had just come back from 7 months of traveling to 10 different countries. So I was kind of landing after a very crazy routine.
Got it. Okay. And were you doing anything pre-event or anything that might have created a readiness for these non-logic based intuitive events to occur in your life?
So when I think about the second event, the kind of big one, the one that probably has the biggest impact on me, I had experienced a little bit of workplace abuse, and having that knowledge, which the person that I kind of had this inner knowing about, they were also going. My experience was that I felt like they were going through that as well, and having that, I think, kind of heightened my inner knowing. But the other ones, not necessarily.
Okay. And can you tell us the definition of workplace abuse in case people don't know?
Sure. So for me, workplace abuse was being in a situation in a workplace where one is being taken advantage of, where one doesn't seem to have a sense of autonomy in one's ability to live their life outside of the workplace. that a few years before I had that experience of inner knowing is that I had gone through workplace abuse. I was working somewhere and it was so bad that I was really sick from it, and it didn't last even a year, that particular job. But I had my best friend at the time who had bouts of like being best friends, not being best friends, and particularly during this period, I felt really hurt by this friend because they had the sense of like, you know, it's just a job. You know, you don't have to take it so personally. Like, this isn't that serious. Just do your work and come home and just shake it off, kind of a sense. And I had the sense of like, they just don't get it. This is real trauma happening in the workplace. So luckily I got the support I needed to get out. Fast forward a couple of years later, I'm at a new job. They had been at their job for a very long time. And I had this feeling that something wasn't right with them. And I remember being at work. The same friend. Okay. And it's also interesting because I had friends who were like, I don't know why you're still friends with this person. They don't support you the way you should be supported. And they're very inconsistent. And I had this feeling that there's a reason they were in my life.
Right.
And then, there was a particular day where I was like, I don't feel right. Like, I felt like urgency. Like, the word that comes up for me is I felt constant urgency to be in touch with this friend. And this is before, like, people texted memes and GIFs were on the keyboard. So I was emailing cartoon clips or funny things or videos because I had this sense of I have to lighten them up. I felt like something very heavy was happening. Like, I felt like in my gut again. Like, I felt like heaviness in my gut. Like, I need to lighten the mood. I need to lighten things up. And so I did that all day Friday, all day Saturday, because I knew that they were going to be working on like a big project.
Just sending light, sending love, sending light.
Yeah. And then on Sunday at around 1 p.m., I get a call from this friend, and they couldn't even finish a whole sentence. They're like, hey, so I got your email, but I'm really busy, and it was just this inability to connect a full sentence, and I felt like I knew, like, there wasn't my comfort. For me, like, this is a confirmation. Something's not right here.
Right,
they're not coherent, right? They're very fragmented, not coherent. And so I started asking very basic questions, like, so when was the last time you had a meal? They're like, I don't have time. I'm like, did you shower? No, I can't, there's this, I'm like, okay. So it's 1 o'clock, you haven't had breakfast, you haven't had lunch. And I didn't have a car at the time. And I told them, I'm gonna rent a car. I'm driving down because they lived by the Jersey Shore. And I'm like, we're gonna get lobster rolls and you're buying. Okay. And once again, I was being really light about it. Right. Because I could feel how just fragmented, like you said, they felt very fragmented. And then I drove down only to find out that they were going through extreme workplace abuse where the bosses were taking vacations, but the small team wasn't allowed, and they were working 24/7 for 3 months. It was, this person lived at the shore. It was August. They hadn't gone to the beach yet. They had and they worked from home. So there was like extreme isolation. They couldn't get out of the loop of even taking a step back to take a shower or to get a meal, to make a meal. And so in that time, I was able to kind of ask the questions without saying you're in workplace abuse, kind of like, okay, so what's going on? So when did you start feeling this way? And, let me look at your health insurance card. And I was able to do for them what I had to do for myself in my workplace abuse that they kind of hold that space that they weren't able to hold for me. And I had this sense of, this is why you went through this, because theirs was just as extreme, and they really didn't have they had isolated so deeply that they didn't have anyone who even realized that they were going through that. They were completely alone.
The intuitive part, or the intuitive aspect, would be that you felt that person.
I did.
Even through distance.
I did.
And the fragmentation that was happening in isolation. So if we just kind of like slow things down and revisit even that feeling, or any other time you've had similar feelings where the sensitivity lays heavy in the belly area, because the belly brain is a thing, actually. There's so many connections and neural networks and things like that in our stomachs that it really does inform us and tells us things.
Yeah.
And so for you, I'm how does it feel for you? Heavy like what? Heavy like a weight? Heavy like somebody's pushing on you, pushing down, in, outside? What would that be?
Yeah, so I would say it feel like I could even feel it now. Like it feels like heavy as if someone's like, not as even if someone's pushing down, as if there are weights being placed in there. And I feel it like on the bottom and on the sides, and it's almost like an acidity too. Like I feel like not throughout the whole stomach, but where the weight, like where the heaviness, the bottom is pulling down, there's like a sense of like acidity.
And would you say that it's bubbling, acidity, or that's too light, or like an anchor?
Like something's like telling me to stop, like don't move.
Yeah, I see. And would you say then it's like a constriction, or it's different? It's just a weighing down, not a tightening.
Right.
No. Feel different.
No, doesn't feel tight. It just, in fact, it feels like as if it almost feels as if it wants to expand, but I'm aware enough to breathe into it and not allow it to expand. Because it feels like if I let it, it could, like it feels like the rocks are pushing out. I even like feel something, like thinking about it now, I even feel it like radiating to my back.
Right. Yeah, and it's important.
Like stirring.
Yeah. And normally when it stirs, does it normally stir when you have that feeling or sensation?
If I don't act upon it.
Yeah. Okay. And then in your everyday life, how would you contrast that feeling differently versus like just driving down the road without an intuitive hit, or you're chilling at the beach without any kind of heavy intuitive feeling?
I just don't presence it. Like there's not that feeling. That weight doesn't exist until something says it's when it shows up. I feel it, and I'm aware that I need to observe what it's telling me. But when I'm driving, I don't feel it.
Right.
When I'm like at work,
Yeah.
even when I'm stressed at work, I don't necessarily feel it, right? It's not. It's in the moments that I need to, it's almost like it's telling me, pay attention.
One thing that I've noticed in doing these interviews, and even in my own level of subtle awareness, is wherever I'm weak physically in my body, like I have an interesting low back injury thing that sometimes I feel things in my low back from like, because it's a weak, it's a weakened, like thinner spot in my energetic field or something.
Right.
And in my physical field for sure.
Right.
That there's damage there. Or I had seizures when I was young, 2 years old. So sometimes I would have headaches, or I get other people's headaches, because it's a weaker kind of spot for me. So I'm just curious in your case, if there's any kind of link or something because of the sensitivity of the digestive issues that you were speaking about, and if you can maybe like just check that out and see if there's like, if you feel like there might be a relationship with that.
Oh my goodness. So what comes up for me is like, as you say that, the feeling that I presence is very similar to the pain I used to get when I was having digestive issues. I was having extreme digestive issues. I couldn't eat without almost passing out in pain. And it kind of resided in that lower spot, very acidic, and nothing I could do would kind of relieve it. So yeah, I would definitely say the feeling is almost exactly the same, residing in the same part. Because I know people who have that stomach issue and then it comes up. But for me, it was always just sitting on the bottom, sitting heavy, like wanting. It's almost like feeling like I want to double over, because that's the pain lives right in that bottom part where I can double over.
Interesting. Yeah, and so in that case, it seems like for us who are more sensitive in the world and pay attention to the intuitive cues and things like that, if we really kind of look at wherever this, like it could be your elbow or your shoulder or something got pulled out or whatever it is, but when intuition is communicating, it can resonate in the field where the physical body is weaker, and we get to pay close attention to it because of the history with that injury.
Right.
Because now you know what that weakness feels like in a very intimate way, in an intimate nature. and maybe it's now like an antenna, right, to receive information in a different method that you suddenly cue in, and now it helps inform in a different way. You felt your friend, and we're just loving them all up, sending the emails and the cool gifts and everything, lighten things up, and then went to visit. And then what happened? Did they confide in you?
They were able to confide that they were going through a breakdown and that they didn't know how to control the situation, and so I was able to guide them to getting support through their insurance with the counseling. But I would say the most impactful thing that happened was a few weeks later. They had called to thank me again for coming down, for renting the car, for doing all it took to get them, because they were already starting to feel better. And then at the point where they were feeling better, they had confided that had I not showed up, they were considering taking their life.
Wow.
And when they said that, it was like a voice that came down in my head, kind of like when I was having the intuitive hit about just picking languages, like that kind of inner knowing came in, and a voice in my head said, and this is why you were here for this long. This is why this friendship lasted this long. And I had this feeling, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're gonna be best friends forever and ever. And not even a year later, we just lost touch. But there was a sense of peace, because at the moment they had confided that, I got that message that this is why I was here, and almost a sense of like, your work here is done.
So I'm just thinking of your friends who were like, trying to protect you probably in that 15-year journey, and you were just like hanging in, like,
Yeah, I just was like, I'm not ready. I wasn't, the feeling was like, no, we've been this friends for this long. We deserve to like figure this out. Like they're like my best friend for, like over a decade. That's a long time to not fight for something.
Yeah.
And that inner knowing, that peace that I did what I had to do was also really comforting to say, like, if I have to walk away from this, there was so much peace. It was just like a peace that came in. I felt like, okay, now I can let go if it has to be let go, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen, instead of forcing it or defending it the way that I had been doing before.
So then in that way, there was, I want to really speak to our own compass of knowing and not knowing. So I always call it in my own life a clear yes and a clear no. And if it's not clear, then it just remains.
Right.
And so it sounds like it could be similar in this case, where the friendship was hanging, people didn't agree with you, but you were like, but it's not clear for me yet, and so I'm going to hang until it becomes clear. And then after that moment in time, with it was a suicide attempt, right? Or not attempt, but a contemplation.
Correct.
Suicide contemplation moment. Then you stepped in because you knew something with that sensitive belly, and then were able to impact and cause change in somebody else's life. And then after that became clear for you. And it sounds like clear for them too in some way.
Yeah.
That it's just like, okay, cool.
It was from such a place of just unconditional compassion and love for what had happened, to be able to just move on. The moment they shared that they were contemplating hurting themselves, and I got the message that this is why I was here, I felt like waves, like something going through my body, like if I could visualize it, I could like imagine like oscillation of me, and on a cellular level, on a physical level, just almost like me was being shaken. Like I'm waking up to that. I was waking up to that knowledge that this is why I was here for them.
In the sense of being like a feeling-based being, meaning like a kinesthetic or a clairsentient kind of feeling, touch being, the vibrations are a real experience that are hard to talk about and describe. Sometimes they feel like waves, like in the ocean, like going through you. That's been my own experience. Other people have described them as constrictions or tightening, or complete expansion, where it's like, where are even the edges of my skin? I can't tell. And then to have like a vertical kind of current, which we're going to talk about, I think.
Yes.
You mentioned in a little bit too. but have this vertical current thing happening in this oscillation in a vertical, kind of way
Yeah.
is fascinating as well.
Yeah, like a funhouse mirror where you see yourself
Right.
in a funky way. That's how it felt, more of that vertical, but funky wave, not necessarily very funky. It's kind of like I could see it. It's almost like even though it didn't physically happen in that way, I could see how I felt
Right.
in that moment.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
To be like, I can see how it felt. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Totally. No, it's totally rad. Okay, cool. Well, I think it's an amazing experience, and I'd love to hear about the journey and the steadfastness and holding true to yourself while you listen to your own inner guidance, because that's what we're about here at Intuitive Human, is to determine and even like take the steps into the unknown, because there's some piece that is known, and then the rest will eventually show itself.
Right.
And having the faith or the trust or the confidence and the safety to stick with it until.
Right.
And then eventually it all comes clear.
Right.
How do you relate to your intuition now? Like, how does it impact and guide your daily life, or your connections with people or relationships or friendships or any of that kind of thing?
So I would say definitely trust my gut. And
literally.
I literally do. And I know when I'm betraying myself, because I'll know I'll be feeling it and I'll go along with something even though my gut is saying, this isn't the right thing
like
for you
this.
to do. Yeah.
Like,
It's going, no, we tell you no. And I'm like,
Right.
but my brain is telling me something else. So like, for the most part, I do trust the gut feelings, but in the moments that I'm not and I'm aware,
Right.
I see how I'm betraying that intuition. Like it's almost like I'm telling myself, why are you doing this?
It's
why?
It's a great point.
Because we know, you get to the point where and when you still act against that inner knowing, it's like, those memes that you see about your spirit guides, like getting upset when you do something, like getting annoyed, like your inner sense gets annoyed, like, why are you doing this?
The pinche the free will.
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly. So then I guess I'll ask you the final question, which is, do you feel like intuitive experiences or intuition is reserved for special magical people, or anybody can do it?
I believe everyone's magic. So I think everyone can do it.
Yeah.
You just have to be aware enough to feel the signs, to presence them, to act upon them. No, I think we could probably go on forever, but I think these are great examples of how intuition has guided me and caused me to understand that I have an inner knowing.
And something like beyond logic. Yeah. Like, we're creating a glossary of terms, and it's amazing how the information and even the definitions are so dispersed. But one thing that seems clear is that these intuitive hits or experiences will come, and that they come without logic or reason.
Right.
But there's some kind of breadcrumb, some kind of sliver, even if it's just a tiny sliver, that you can hold on to, that you know that it's real and it's true. And then you get to choose if you're going to focus on that or not, and then that muscle will grow or not. So we all have choice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
For sharing your experiences. We super appreciate it. And we hope that anybody else watching this will also appreciate and resonate to any of the experiences themselves, or directly or indirectly, or lead them into new and deeper levels of who they are as intuitive humans.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.